everyone. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. So, if you're watching on YouTube, if you could please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can always follow us there. Every like and share and subscribe can help our channel to be seen by many more Stargate fans. So, we really appreciate it. And then we also have all of our socials listed up on the screen right now if you wish to follow us there. Okay, thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Bye.
I thought today it would be really cool to talk about the replicators because we've actually talked about the Goa'uld some, and we've talked about some of the other kind of main enemies in some other episodes, but we've never really covered the replicators much at length. And now I think you and I have both finished at least season 3 of Atlantis. I'm kind of stuck in season 3 of Atlantis until next week. I don't know how far you've gone in the future, but there's definitely been some sort of movement with the replicators in Atlantis. So I thought we could maybe talk about the replicators in SG-1 and in Atlantis and kind of how we felt about them and what we think they bring to the series.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a great topic because I think like I had said last time, I think it was our last episode where I mentioned like replicators were one of my favorites. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You did. It feels a long time ago, but you're right. You did say that because I remember that Martin feels they're creepy, but you actually enjoy the replicators. And
Yeah.
I think they're a great addition to the show. Maybe I can just start with saying some of my initial kind of thoughts, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Obviously, the main point about the replicators that I enjoy is how they were used to create one of the main plot points of the series while also introducing a consistent nemesis that sort of persisted through at least through season 3 of Atlantis. I don't know if they come back. Nobody say it, but they persist a very long time, and it was sort of this kind of thing that was brought in where SG-1 had to help the Asgard and because the Asgard couldn't figure out how to kill them, and they were kind of threatening the Asgard, and then it was the more primitive thinking and primitive weapons of the humans that enabled them to eventually um, save the Asgard in this situation, and that resulted in them being kind of in the Asgard's sort of favor, and that they, I mean, not that they owed them, but that they were in their good graces, and it kind of really helped this I guess you would call it an alliance. And I felt like it was a really important alliance. And so I think that the replicators were really instrumental in that. But it's also kind of interesting. And I don't know what you think about this, but it's very interesting to me that you have this alliance with these extremely intelligent beings that are one of the original four races. And yet the thing that ties the humans, which are on the way to being the fifth race, to this is basically these machines that, I mean, I don't know how much higher function they have in terms of, obviously in the beginning they don't have much higher brain function. They're just these sort of things that replicate. And I think that's kind of fascinating. So, I mean, in comparison to the other like the Goa'uld at this time, I do find that kind of interesting. But yeah, what are your thoughts? What were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't I don't really even know why I like the replicators so much. I just think they're kind of cool because it's like kind of like this character. It's like the idea of the replicators, I think initially when I was first introduced to the replicators in SG-1, you kind of look at it and you see these little like robotic looking things that just kind of scurry around, and the sound design I think is cool. I know Martin last time was saying that creeped him out, but like I like the sound design for them. And it's like I almost get like this false impression that they're not as dangerous as you would think because they're not like emotionally driven initially. I think where it's like you get this like emotional sense of fear when you're watching them. It was just kind of like all of a sudden it's just initially out of control. They just kind of keep replicating and they're trying to figure out like how to get rid of them. And so it's like interesting to me how it can be like something that ends up being such a hard thing to beat because of what kind of thing it is, but yet you don't necessarily, at least I don't feel that when I'm watching it, I feel a sense of fear or anything like that. Like, whereas I think sometimes when we watch other like bad guys or whatever, like in Atlantis the Wraith, or, some of I mean, the gold, I don't know. Like sometimes they're just kind of funny, but like, it's like you watch certain things and get a certain, at least how, like when I watch things, I get like a certain emotional pull from certain situations or conversations that characters have. And so what's interesting about the replicators, it's like it isn't like they can communicate with them initially, right? Um Granted, then they become human replicators, but like, or human replicators, right? um but before that, it isn't like they can speak with them. They're just kind of, causing all these problems and destroying all of this like technology and stuff that can be really bad, and you understand that it could potentially destroy basically the world, right? But like, it's done in a very interesting way. So I do think, and we'll probably talk about this as we continue, but like kind of like the evolution of the replicators in a sense of like what they gradually progress to be, I find kind of fascinating as well, because I think that was very much so needed for them to kind of be a
Hmm.
continuing character, I think.
Oh, absolutely. No, I would agree with you. And I think this is kind of interesting because, yeah, you do have it that in the beginning, they're just kind of these things that can overrun the base. And
Yeah,
there's no, but it's kind of nice because usually when they come in those points in Stargate, everything has been so emotionally tense in other episodes that you're like, oh, cool, they're just gonna shoot some things that look like spiders but aren't really
exactly.
spiders. And I mean, yeah, it's not fear. You feel it's more of like a suspense. You feel watching it, and so it's kind of a new flavor that I guess is really nice.
Yeah,
um, which is interesting because then the episodes that they bring in later, which are I mean, I guess we can say the beginning of the replicators and then the progression are both extremely emotional, which is the episode where Reese comes in, and then
yeah,
eventually the episode that leads to the human form replicators. But I guess first, I mean, I thought the Reese introduction was kind of interesting, and I know you've mentioned before your feelings on that character.
yeah.
So yeah, maybe you can say kind of what you thought of that episode
Yeah.
briefly.
I've always said I love Reese. Like I just
Yeah.
love her character, and I think it goes to how they they make that character very likable and innocent and kind of silly in a sense. Like not silly like how like like humor, but it's just kind of like, she acts like a little kid, which it's kind of amusing to kind of watch. And then it's almost like she kind of has like a crush on Daniel, I think, if I remember correctly. And
Hmm.
and
Totally.
and there's something very endearing about her, I think. Um and so it gives this false sense of like, oh, she's not dangerous. Like, like you feel bad for her because, you feel like she doesn't realize what she's caused. Um, and it's like there's a lot of, this is the first time I think where it's like you really start to feel a lot of emotion towards the replicators, because it's like before that, like you said, it's just like these clinky like spidery things. And so it's like, I don't know, there's just something about her character that maybe I can't fully pinpoint, but that's kind of what I like about her, is how there's something very likable about her that it makes you forget. Like, and I think it goes to show that when things are dangerous, or can cause problems, it doesn't, you can't go by what something maybe looks like or doesn't look like or how it acts. You have to go by the actual actions of what's happening, to
Yep.
realize
That's a
like
good
the
point.
actual danger value. And I think a lot of times, um, you know, I think it's just human nature to see certain types of faces and think you're fine, think they're not dangerous. And she definitely doesn't have a dangerous look about her. She looks like a
Mm-mm.
teenager, basically. That's just, just wanting to have fun, basically, right? If I remember correctly, when she was like on base, like she was just kind of bored, and then that's when they
Yep.
realized that she could create replicators, to play with, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I just find that whole character, I think it's kind of a genius way, like to kind of start progressing the replicators, because it does make you emotionally feel both ways. Like one way you're like really feeling for her character and feeling like, she seems to be innocent, and she doesn't seem to realize what has happened. But
Totally.
then she gets so mad that then she becomes quite dangerous. And that was still around the time when Daniel was very uh forgiving and very
Hmm.
wanting to believe that there's good in everyone. And I think eventually his character changes to be a little bit more like unsure of people, but like that was during the time where he was just very like loving towards everyone. And
Yes. Yeah.
so all he wanted to do was help her, and then got really upset with Jack when Jack basically destroys her or shoots her. I can't remember what happens. I think he shoots her, right?
I think so in the end. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's like in a very emotional thing. So yeah, so that's basically kind of what I think about the character. But I mean, I don't know if we've ever fully talked about your initial thoughts and what you feel of that character. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
we have, but it'd be nice
Yeah.
to remind.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the other thing we have to say is, in case people either don't remember or they haven't seen it yet, Reese is not actually human.
Yeah.
She's a machine. So I think that's kind of, I mean, and it's interesting because it also foreshadows later when the human replicators come. I mean, as I just think about it now and thinking about some of the things you said and what we just talked about with the replicators as kind of an enemy, what's really interesting to me about that particular episode in terms of, other than the things that are more related to on the Daniel side of things in terms of his character and how it kind of shows his character development, um, it just occurred to me it's kind of interesting because we described these characters and or the replicators, and we just said something that we find nice and kind of a new flavor is that they were so, in a way, unemotional and just there.
Hmm.
And that's why when we learned about the creation, that aspect of it doesn't change, because we learned from her that she just made them as toys. So they're not evil. There's no motivation that they have to be evil.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of a nice consistency, that instead they put all of the emotional pull in that episode on her and her relationship with Daniel and his kind of turmoil about deciding what to do with her, rather
Yeah.
than, oh, the replicators, we found some hidden motivation. And I really appreciate that they did
Yeah.
that they didn't like change the core of the replicators, that they were able to do something else. And I also kind of appreciate that by the end of the episode, I mean, they didn't really learn much. I mean, they learned where they came from. I think they learned that there was this connection of them, which was really helpful, but
Yeah.
it didn't really create this situation in which, oh, we found the origin of the replicators. Now that's it. We can wipe them out easily. It's still kind of, I mean, I love that about Stargate, that they always had this way of allowing you to get a little bit further, but that it didn't like crack open everything in like one
Yeah.
episode. So
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember, weren't they exploring some other planet and they happened to find her just kind of laying there? And so they
yes,
were just like, oh my
exactly.
gosh, there's a girl here. And so then they brought her in to help her. So they initially had no clue, like, that she was anything to do with the replicators at all. And it isn't until she got bored and wanted to play that she created a replicator that they realized that.
Yes,
And so
exactly.
I think initially they were treating her like, I can't remember if they even thought, did they think she was human initially, or did they always know that she was like a robot, basically? Or I don't know what you would call her, but
I feel like at some point they must have known, because she would have been examined, and so I feel like they knew. I don't know how quickly they
oh
knew.
yeah, Dr. Fraser, I think, says that she wasn't human.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what point of the episode they found out that she wasn't, but they did know. And they knew before she made the replicator blocks. But I think they were all really shocked when
Yeah,
they saw what she was doing.
I think they thought that she didn't know. Like she
Yeah.
didn't know that
Yeah.
she was um yeah, not human. And I can't remember like if she what she knew eventually, like if they found out that she knew what she was or anything, but because it's been quite a while since I've seen that episode, but yeah, yeah, but that's a good point that you were mentioning about everything that you were saying earlier. I think that's a really good point to make with the replicators, but and then it goes on to then progress, right? So then it goes on to progress to where then because of that experience, then they're basically taught how to make
Well,
human like replicators, right?
I think what happens with the human replicators, if I remember correctly, they help the Asgard basically trap all the replicators in a time dilation, where their time basically is stopped or slowed, or but I think something happens and they learn. I can't remember. I have to refresh my memory. I think something happens where the time dilation actually reverses and it goes super fast, and so they evolve. And when they encounter the replicators, because I think the idea was that they put them in a time dilation field that slowed, and then
Hmm.
they're basically frozen, effectively frozen. But they sped this time dilation got sped,
Yeah,
and so like so many years went by that they evolved, and I think that's when they took human form. They basically evolved into human form.
yeah.
And that's when there's the episode where I mean, and this is a really interesting, I mean, again, it's fascinating because it's such a thing that it starts so unemotional, and then you have one of these episodes that in the end it's so like kind of heartbreaking at the end what happens, that they meet them, and there's one of them that is, according to them, defective. And like, remember that was Reese, that it was also mentioned in the episode, oh, her dad made her wrong. That's that she
Yeah.
was wrong. And so you already have this kind of like connection. One of them, the fifth one that they made, was quote unquote defective because he had too many human like traits.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, what was your reaction when you first encountered the human replicators? Like, I'm just curious when when they first got
I
there and you realized they're replicators.
I I think my initial reaction was that it felt really creepy. Like that was the first time I got creeped out by the replicators because even though they've taken human form, that they look human, like the way they looked at them and the way the one leader guy looked, especially, like I don't remember what his name was or if he was a number or what it was, but um they just have this really like creepy look because again now they're like where I think it was very different with Reese. I feel like she kind of like showed like emotions, right? She showed when she was
Yes,
feeling bored, she showed that she was kind of infatuated with Daniel, like she showed that.
totally, totally.
With these characters you don't typically see it except for what was his name? Fifth? Is that what you
Fifth,
said?
yep,
Fifth, yeah.
yep.
Um and so initially, when they first see, I believe like they're all just kind of standing there, right? And then they find out that those are actually the replicators. So my initial response was that it was just creepy because like the look they have in their eye and everything was just creepy. It was just kind of like, I think there's something about when you see like a human form that you expect to react in a human way, and when they don't, it feels uneasy. So
Yes, that's true.
I think that's kind of genius because immediately just from them changing the appearance of the replicators, then immediately you start to get a sense of like, oh, this like does not feel okay, like something's gonna happen.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I mean, probably this is the one time in history that you can imagine the human form of something is creepier than the spider form. I mean,
Ah, yeah.
like the spider form is actually not as creepy as the humans. And the humans, yeah, I know, I mean, like, but it's true. You go and they have this kind of way about them that is just unsettling. Like, because they're
Yeah,
not really, except for Fifth, like, he is
yeah.
endearing. And I think, I mean, this is where I guess the great tragedy comes in because in the end, just like with Reese. they have to betray him, and I mean basically he helps them leave, and they lie to him so that they can get away, and he gets stuck into the time dilation field.
Yeah.
And um I mean that is very tragic because I think um it's one of those situations where you know that probably they make the right decision. Like this is the decision you have to make, but it doesn't feel good. It feels
Yeah.
really bad. I mean, I don't know if you have this reaction, but I love this about Stargate, and I know we've talked about this like with Michael and with other things that they've done, where it's one of those situations where you know that that is the choice they had to make, but it can't have been easy, and it feels just so like icky when it happens, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
It feels very like unnatural to have to do something like that because there's a level of innocence that Fifth like portrays initially. He has a lot of trust in them like a child would,
yes.
and completely trusts them without a doubt. And so I think every person can relate to a moment in their life where probably they were very trusting of something or someone, and then that trust is broken. And so I think that immediately pulls on the heartstrings of pretty much everyone because
Yeah.
it's like you're, I mean, it's kind of like the equivalent of like if you have a little puppy and you just
Yeah,
leave it
right?
there. You're just like, no, you can't leave the puppy there. You can't do that to the puppy. Like, how could you? And like, immediately your heart is broken. It's kind of like that same feeling because like he was so, so trusting, like, without a doubt, he thought he was getting out of there with them and fully trusted Sam and was like, you know, kind of like infatuated with her in a sense, but like in a very innocent way, I think. And
Yeah.
like, um, yeah, it's just like really, really sad. And so I remember when I saw that before I had, as doing this watch through again, how I've mentioned before, this was my second time of going through SG-1. I couldn't remember what initially happened with the replicators. And so I remember talking to you when we first like were going over that episode, I think at one time, and you saying, "Oh, just wait till you see what
Yes.
happens. Then we can talk about how you feel about that character," because like you knew things were going to change that would potentially change my opinion of Fifth. And yeah, so yeah, it's again very genius. Like I'm always in awe of the writers and how they're
Same.
able to put these things together because you all like I always just realize like how good they are. And I know it's probably annoying that I always mention it, but it's just like if you think of other shows you watch, like very rarely does every episode have so much in it that works so well together and pulls your
Totally.
emotions in all these variety of ways, keeping your interest through the whole thing. So it just goes to show you like the whole team of people, how good all of them are.
100%. 100%. Yeah, no, we probably can't say it enough,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, so I guess then revisiting that, because now we've kind of caught up to like, I think where we start talking about it, because I think, yeah, we did say, oh, yeah, let's talk about, I think it was in the episode we were talking about Samantha's love interests. And
Oh,
right,
okay.
because he was one of them, and I was curious. I mean, maybe it might have been, but like, I mean, I'd be curious, how did your thoughts, I mean, as we kind of move into talking about, Replicator Carter, I would be curious how your thoughts then changed towards Fifth.
Yeah. So I can't fully remember what episode it was that then you see Fifth again. I think a lot of episodes happen before it gets to where you see him again, right?
Hmm.
And by that point he's just mad, right? He's like ready to get revenge, and it's created him into this like version of himself where again you can relate in the sense of if you put it in a human way and you think of someone maybe going through something as a kid that was very traumatic, then maybe as they grow older they're going to react to situations in an unhealthy way because of what they experience. So it's kind of very similar to that. And
Totally.
Yeah, I think I was just really disappointing that I knew like probably something extreme was going to happen with them if we saw him again. Like clearly like it wouldn't make sense to not to have him, change. But I think initially I was kind of sad that like to see that like he turned out the way he turned out, and then he gets very cruel, right? And
Yeah,
then, you know, Amanda Tapping is so great with how she is as Samantha Carter, and the emotion she always brings to that character, and this particular scenes that she has with him where he's like constantly doing that mind thing. I don't know what you
yep,
call it, um, to her, and he's basically torturing her, and she's just like such a sweet character that doesn't deserve that. And she felt heartbroken to actually leave him there, but knew she had to do it. It's like what he then puts her through because he's just mad is like
yep.
horrible. And so then you start to definitely not like him, right? At least that's how I felt. And then you just start to want her to definitely destroy him.
Yeah.
Destroy.
But yeah, no, I mean, the way I felt with Fifth in that situation is it is absolutely what you imagine when you think of someone who experiences betrayal and rejection and doesn't process through it in a healthy way. And so you
Yeah.
have him where he went through the first step, which is, where he kind of he puts her in that sort of fake reality
Hmm.
and tries to make her feel like she wants to be there. And basically, it's the whole I'm going to try and make you love me thing.
Yeah.
Um, but she doesn't. And then I think he just, I mean, it's interesting because then his solution is to make another Sam. But I mean, in the end, of course, the other Sam also leaves him. I mean, I can't remember exactly if, I mean, I know that she betrays SG-1, and I can't remember if she was working with Fifth or if she just was working on her own. I'm pretty sure she just left him anyways, and they were never together
I
because,
think
yeah,
what she said was that he was too weak. He wouldn't
yeah,
have gotten done what he needed to have done. And so she
yeah,
basically betrays him. She makes him think she's working with him and then
yeah,
betrays him at the very end so that she can take control of everything.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, she betrays SG-1, but she also betrays him, and so I mean, yeah, that's kind of the situation. I mean, this is kind of exactly what you'd expect. Is you can't have someone and then you do everything you can to try and have them. And obviously this Sam isn't the same Sam, no matter I mean, no matter what
Yeah.
how she's created. She's created in Sam's image, but she's still a replicator. And I mean, I have to say, I also thought like this was an amazing job by Amanda Tapping too, because it was so I don't know. You have to tell me how you think about the episode because for me, the first time I watched it, and I mean, even later because I forget things, I really truly did not know until the very end the motivations of the character, like whether the character was for real and like it was so, but yet at the same time, you could tell that there was something about the character that was just not Sam. You know what I mean? Like it was so
Yeah.
carefully done.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I like when something's just not given away, right? Where it's like you just
Yes.
know, and I know sometimes things in shows that can work well, and I'm sure there's probably points in Stargate where there's been characters that I can't think of right now that maybe that's been the case where it's like you just know they're going to do something bad or whatever. Um, and granted, yes, like I feel like the whole time because of her being a replicator, like I'm always thinking in the back of my mind, like, oh, clearly she's going to go against them. But there is then you question yourself because she doesn't give it away, right? Like she's kind of taken on like it always amazes me because it's like if you think about it, like we're watching this is the same person obviously playing it,
Yes.
but then we're viewing it as a separate person, and she's so good as acting as that separate person that's pretending she's Sam Carter in a way, and
Yep.
having that emotional pull on the other people, but then there's clearly something different that for someone to actually act that out and be able to clearly show that in such a
Crazy.
great way, like you have to be so talented to do that.
Oh,
It's like
totally.
to me like that's what really like shows that all these actors that have been in this show like are just so amazing, because it's like I think with really good actors it's like, you know, they're able to really make you believe that, right? As opposed to them being that character. And so
Totally.
yeah, no, you're right, where it's like you are kind of wondering all the way up to the end, like, is she gonna screw them over? Is she like, you know, are we just thinking she's gonna screw them over, but she's not,
Right?
you know?
Yeah.
Are they trying to get us to think that something bad's gonna happen, but she's gonna like save the day, like, and sacrifice
Yeah.
herself and help everyone? You know, you just never know. And so and then also, like, even just like thinking of the look of like when that character's first created, every time have seen that scene, I think, oh my God, what was it like for Amanda Tapping to be covered in all that goo?
That's true. It's a lot of goo. And I guess, what is it? Like, is it goop? It looks like hair gel, but obviously hair gel would get hard. So it's not
Maybe it's,
actually hair gel.
yeah, I don't know. Oh God, that would be horrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Hair
imagine having
gel.
to wash all that hair gel off. No, thank you.
Like, I mean, it's just like, would it be like glycerin? Not glycerin. Is glycerin isn't thick, right? It
I
must
mean,
be a
like
mixture of
Vaseline.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
But
somebody in here knows, tell us in the comments because I'd be curious. And there are people out there that I'm sure have like looked this up and know the answer. So if you know it,
yeah,
please tell us in the
yeah,
comments.
that would be interesting to know, because every time I've seen that scene, all I think is, oh my God, what would that feel like? And then, I mean, they like insinuate like she's supposed to be naked too, right? Like, I don't think she is, but like, just like whenever I see scenes like that, when it's a character that's not typically shown in that way, it's like I just always think how.
I mean, well, and imagine it like, just imagine this, like you wake up and you're fully nude, covered in goo, and the person in front of you is Fifth. I mean, you must be like, I would be freaked out. I don't know about you.
Yeah, that sounds like a really weird dream. And lately I've been
Yeah.
having some really weird dreams. Thankfully, not that though.
Yeah, none of that. Or, it sounds like something somebody would say like when they go to Vegas or something. So, I woke up, I was totally nude, covered in goo, and this weird robot guy was in front of me,
Yes. You know,
trying to
has that
convince
happened
me
to
I was,
anyone?
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, he was trying to convince me I was his soulmate, right? I mean, I'm sure something like that has happened to somebody somewhere.
It's so
Tell us in the
funny.
comments.
Yeah, as a robot tried to convince you that they're your soulmate.
While you wake up naked, covered in goo. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
key element.
Oh my God. Gosh, are we gonna get some scary, scary replies now?
Yeah, what's gonna happen is that you're gonna wake up covered in goo,
Oh no.
and there's gonna be a little knock knock at your door.
It's your fault, Alyssa. It's your fault. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you're very right, like with what you were saying about the Sam replicator. Let's see, what else were we going to talk about? About once the replicators then become part of Atlantis, right? So then we have SG-1, and then we finally have Stargate Atlantis. And so, yeah, if you want to remind me with that, because I know you're talking about the two-parter episode and stuff. Like, is that when they first come in to Atlantis?
No, I think they come in before. So, I mean, I think how it's concluded, I mean, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. How the replicators are concluded in SG-1 is that they have that weapon that can kill them, but then Replicator Sam makes it impossible to kill them. But then eventually or that then they overcome this and use this thing on Dakara, and they all get killed, right? That's the way that they kill them in the end in SG-1, if I'm
Okay.
remembering correctly. I can't
Yeah.
remember if that's, but I have this like strong memory that there's all these replicators coming towards them, and you know Sam and everybody are working on this weapon on Dakara, and then they stop for a second, and then they
Yeah.
because I think at this point like Daniel's ascended and he's able to kind of stop them for a second or something, and then
Oh gosh, that
they,
was when Daniel was ascended. Jeez.
yeah,
Yeah, that's going way back that my mind is like getting confused with other things I've seen with the replicators, I think, in Atlantis. So
right.
I can't
But
fully remember. Yeah.
I think that's how. So I think we all have the sense that the replicators are over, and I think that's this kind of feeling that you have in Atlantis. I mean, at least when I had this, like when I'm watching Atlantis, I don't think at all about replicators. I think replicators done, we have the Wraith, but I think it's in an episode where they
And you
go to a,
haven't finished season 3, right?
I'm almost done. I'm almost done with season 3. I haven't gotten to the ending. Is the ending a replicator episode? I thought it was probably a Wraith episode, right?
Oh God. It's
You
all
don't
blurring into
remember?
my head. I know that there are replicators involved with stuff, and I can't remember for the life of me if it's the end of season 3 or if it's beginning of season 4. There is something
Okay.
with replicators, yeah.
Okay. Well, then maybe the purpose of this episode, we can always revisit it. Maybe we only talk through that two-parter.
Yeah.
And maybe we can revisit like the situation at the end of Atlantis because we'll probably want to revisit the Wraith and everything. Anyways, um, but for this, maybe this introduction of the replicators into Atlantis, if I remember right, they met this really advanced race that seemed promising, but something seemed off with them. And then they discovered they were replicators, right?
Yeah.
And of course, it was a very similar thing. There was one that was kind of helping them, Liam, right? And they,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
right? And I mean, they did. Do you remember exactly what happened? Because somehow it ended up that they had him in a ship with them, and they were escaping.
Yeah.
Hang on.
They needed I'm afraid I'm gonna like say something that's from later on, but I don't think this is from later on.
Mhm.
Um
No, no, no.
s-
Say it, because if it's
s-
involving Liam, it's definitely not
yeah.
later on.
So he's the guy was kind of like that was one of the replicators that wanted to help them, right? Out of
Yes,
that
yeah.
group of like what they thought was advanced beings that was connected to Atlantis, then and they realized it was replicators, right?
Yes,
That's what we're talking about.
yes,
Yeah, I think something happens where they initially have him and he's supposed to help them, but then something happens where the replicators catch on and start rewriting code or something or rewriting something,
exactly,
and
exactly,
then
exactly.
they need to shoot him out.
Yes,
Shoot
yeah,
him
into
out to the
space. Yeah.
space and like to get rid of him because he's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Exactly. So I think that it kind of, I guess when this episode ended, I had this feeling like the replicators were going to come back,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you'll have to tell me your feeling on this, but when the next time they came back, was this episode, The Return. And it was this weird episode where, because okay, they have now introduced the replicators again, and I think I forgot to mention this, but when they meet the people that are the replicators, they're not just thinking they're advanced, they're actually like Atlanteans,
Mm-hmm.
at least they think, and so, but they're
Yeah.
not actually Atlanteans. And I mean, I think they set it up weirdly, like they almost make it seem like the Atlanteans were bad and made some decisions, and then they had just kind of a conflict of opinion, and that's
Yeah.
why they
Yeah.
lived and they didn't. Okay, so you have met the replicators, and there's this kind of looming feeling that they will come back. I honestly thought they were going to come back in the ending, but they came back in the mid season two-parter, which I loved. It's one of my favorite two-parters. Um, and I mean, I would like to know your thoughts because I mean, we'll talk about episode, but you know, they set it up. It starts, the Atlanteans come back to Atlantis, and then they all leave Atlantis, and everybody kind of takes them at their word. And to be honest, I really thought that it was going to turn out that those so-called Atlanteans were replicators again.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
something felt so not right about that whole situation to me that I was just like, oh, I bet you they're actually replicators or something weird is going on.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. That wasn't the case. But
Yeah. I
yeah,
think if I remember correctly, I was thinking the same thing too.
yeah. And then it just turned out that the replicators came after so many months or something and basically destroyed the new Atlanteans back in Atlantis. And then of course, they have to bail them out. And because O'Neill was there, O'Neill and Woolsey are there, and they were stuck there with the replicators having taken over. So yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts on that episode? Because yeah, I'm just curious. I
Oh my
have
gosh.
many.
I mean, maybe it would be easier, honestly, to hear your thoughts first. That might re-jog my memory a lot with it, because for some reason, like my two-parter Atlantis episode knowledge is
Yeah.
very limited at the moment because it's a while back that I had seen it. And so while I remember it, there's a lot about it that I don't. So I think probably as you talk about your thoughts about it, that will probably re-jog my memory a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I probably don't remember all of it as well. But just to kind of get into the things that I've really appreciated about it is, I mean, obviously, I really like the banter of O'Neill and Woolsey, who were kind of
Yeah.
stuck there. And basically, the Atlantis team was rescuing them and trying to rescue them so that they didn't blow up the city and themselves, and to also make sure that the replicators are eliminated. Um, but what was interesting is that I think in this case, they basically had to somehow come up with a way to destroy them all at once.
Hmm.
And if I remember right, the way they did this was completely giving the wrong information to both Woolsey and O'Neill so that they
Oh,
were unsure of
yeah.
what the
Yeah.
actual plan was. And I really loved how that was done because I honestly thought, oh, they're just screwed. Like, how are they going to get out of this? And then you realize, oh, what they did is exactly what they intended to do so that they could eliminate everything. And they did it in such a brilliant way. Because, like, obviously, the replicators can do that mind thing. So you
Yeah.
can't even, I mean, they couldn't have even said what the actual plan was. So
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, if I remember correctly, what was funny about that is once that's all found out, Woolsey clearly had no idea, but I think O'Neill said that he thought he knew something like that was up, like he thought that they had a plan like that. But like
Yeah,
it goes to show you how strong his mind is with the replicators, because whenever they've
yes.
done that mind thing to him, like I think they've always mentioned how strong he is with like trying to resist allowing them to fully kind of probe his mind.
Totally, totally, absolutely. Yeah, no,
And yeah.
I think that's where he has this line when I think it's when Shepard tells him about his plan and he's like, and that's gonna be plan like D or something. And I think that's where O'Neill goes, I think it's called plan F for and he starts singing.
And wasn't it also like, I know this isn't fully about the replicators, but wasn't it also in that episode where you start to see like um leaders of like that are over in Stargate Command kind of like questioning um
Yes.
Weir's like ability to lead Atlantis. And
Hmm.
then when they, because initially they were back in with like Stargate Command, right? And then they came back to rescue O'Neill and Woolsey, I believe, and try and help the city, right? But they weren't supposed to do that, and they all were directly going against an order. And so I think that was a big part of the episode as well, where while all of this is happening, different leaderships are being questioned, and they all possibly made it that they're screwed in a sense at first, by doing this, that they would then later get in trouble. But then I think O'Neill made it that they didn't, like everything went over fine.
Yes, I think because they saved O'Neill, because yeah, I guess they question some of the choices which is also, I mean, I guess like it's really complicated because it's really easy to say, yeah, in that situation, I wouldn't have made that choice or I wouldn't have allowed that thing to happen. But it's like, yeah, I mean, when you're not there and you
Yeah.
don't know, I mean, of course, same, I mean, Stargate Command made a lot of decisions that resulted in things going poorly. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think because of this situation, I think that's why O'Neill eventually is really speaking for Weir and for her remaining in command.
Yeah. Yeah, because had they not went back, I think everything would have been destroyed, right? And then
Hmm.
they would have died in it and everything. So yeah.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I think the plan, I mean, I think at the very last minute they were able to say don't blow up the city because I think they had this directive to blow it up because it's
Yeah.
replicators. Because, and I mean, it's just, I think this was probably one of the very few times where I was taken completely. I mean, it can't happen that they're all just taken and that the city goes up. But I was surprised. I was kind of taken off guard by what the plan actually had been, how they kind of got it over on them, you know?
Yeah. 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 And it's interesting too, because it's like the thing that I find kind of weird about that, like it worked really well and it all makes sense. But then there's that skeptical part of my brain that questions that altogether because I was just like, well, like if you think of how like Rodney is, right? Rodney McKay, like, and
Mhm.
how nervous he normally gets with everything, but yet he was
True.
like a genius actor in that moment, like in
Yeah,
terms
that's
of
true. Like,
being Rodney McKay as being an actor to deceive them to make them think there was this plan that wasn't really the plan. And I'm thinking, but would he really so excellently speak it like that and make it seem so believable? Or would he know that he's lying to them to get them to believe it and screw it up because he's nervous and he's thinking, oh my gosh, this has to work? Or would he be so desperate to want to live that it would work and he would make those acting skills like, you know, um, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like by acting skills, I don't mean him as the actor, but Rodney McKay pretending. Because I
the
think
actor,
he
yeah, I know what you
yeah,
mean.
yeah, because I think he even jokes around at the end saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm good at acting," or something like that. Like, he says something about his acting. And
Yeah.
so, like, there's the skeptical part of me that questions, like, could that have really worked? Could that whole plan have really worked? Like, could they have actually gotten across the wrong information to them without someone knowing that they're lying, so then their brain is empty to thinking that the replicators wouldn't know and do a different plan. Like, that's just interesting is all.
Yeah. No, that's a good, actually, that's a really good point. I mean, to me, I would say 50-50 because on the one hand, Rodney McKay is sometimes like he's totally panicked and but then there's sometimes these moments like when he is in the zone and he's just doing it, where it seems like
Yeah,
all of that goes out the window. And
true.
I don't know, like you said, this could be one of those situations where it went totally out the window, or it could be a situation where, yeah, that part of it is maybe not so believable because how could he have done that? It
Yeah.
also goes to show how difficult it is to deal with replicators once they become this human form that can probe your mind. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, that's something very different. Like everything else, it's like, oh, well, we can come up with a way to defense against, that they're connected. We have a way of breaking the connection. We learn of that. They learn of the how to deal with Ori. They come up with these weapons that can kind of fight the prior powers. Um, they in the beginning they figured out how to get through the Goa'ulds, like their personal shields. But it's like this particular thing, I don't think it was ever really figured out a way to sort of circumvent it or to prevent it. And that's actually kind of fascinating when you think about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah, I can't think of a moment where they've ever actually tried to go against that part of the replicators, like making something where they're unable to do the mind thing.
Right?
Um,
Like, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. What did you think of um the scene in that where it was, I think, before the Atlantis crew got back there, but it was Jack O'Neill having to go, or no, they were there, but I think that was the scene where he had to go in. Remember, part of it had been flooded and he had to go underwater.
Yes.
Like, I don't know about you, but I always hate when shows have underwater scenes like
Me
that
too.
because I always feel like I can't breathe.
Oh, me too. And I'm always like, there's no way I could keep my breath that long. I mean, there was one with
No.
Jonas. There was one with Jonas like that, and it always gives me so much anxiety. I'm like, oh my gosh, is he gonna make it? Is he gonna make it?
Yeah, wasn't his scene like that? Wasn't that when like then when O'Neill started to respect him more, I think too, because I think he saved
Hmm.
Carter. I think he saved
Yep.
Carter then. Um, but oh my gosh, yeah, like whenever there's those underwater scenes, like I'm just like, one, there's no way someone's gonna hold their breath that long.
Right?
But
Yeah, because
two, yeah.
oh, go on. What's two?
No, I think just two is just like it's just I don't know what I was gonna say. I think it's just like very anxiety ridden. Like the way they film it, they make it appear as if this person is just like able to like calmly hold their breath. And all I could think of is I don't know if you ever saw, oh, what was the name of the movie? Maybe it was called like Poseidon. It was like a modern version of that movie. It was with like, but this was from a long time ago. It was like I think with Kurt Russell or something like that. And it was from quite a while ago. And I always remember there being a scene in that where he drowns and he can't hold his breath any longer. And he does this weird jolty thing because he can't hold it any longer and he dies. And
Oh my
whenever
God.
I see underwater scenes where they're holding their breath, I'm always halfway expecting that weird jolty thing to happen where it's like they just can't anymore. And then ooh, I
Oh
hate
my
it.
gosh. Yeah, no, I've never seen that, but I do. I get that feeling. I know the
Uh,
feeling, like where you feel like you just want to breathe for them.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. It's awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think, there is some stuff that happens with replicators after, so maybe we can talk about that once you've kind of reached that. Um, but
Yes,
yeah,
for
is there
sure.
anything else about the two-parter that you haven't said, or have you basically already kind of discussed what you wanted to there?
I think those are my main points. I mean, I think it's interesting because before we did this episode, I mean, I knew there were a lot of things to cover about replicators, but I think this is the first time I really kind of realized, wow, actually, the replicators are really complex. It's so
Yeah.
much more complex than I had imagined. I mean, because I guess you're not thinking about all of it all at once. And then when you start thinking about all of it, you're going, okay, there's actually a lot of layers there. There's much more to them than
Yeah.
you
And
realize.
yeah, and how they're always able to figure it out. Like there's never seems to be anything they can't figure out. And that's why they had to trick them, right? Because they would have
Yes,
figured it
exactly.
out. And so they always seem to like be like one step ahead in a sense of like being able to rewrite code or whatever it is that they're doing, like rewrite things in order to adjust to what's happening and adjust themselves so that they, can't get killed and things like that. So it's just like they're probably one of like the fiercest enemies in a sense, even though they don't initially, like how we talked about when we were first introduced to them, how they didn't seem all that scary, right?
Right, yeah. And then they became terrifying.
Yeah.
They can read your mind.
Yeah, oh my
Yeah,
God. In a very
yep.
painful way too.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to hear from other people what you think of the replicators. Maybe you were more creeped out by them in the beginning because they look like spiders. I don't know. Um, but yeah, let us know your thoughts on, the replicators in general, human replicators. Do you think Fifth did the right thing? How do you feel about Sam betraying Fifth?
Yeah, yeah, those are all good questions. Yeah, we'd love to hear your opinions overall about like replicator stuff.
Yeah, what's your favorite replicator moment?